I often wonder what people see when they look at me. Maybe just another 25-year-old girl, sitting quietly in the corner of the house, lost in her books, pretending everything is fine. But deep inside, I was breaking piece by piece. Every morning, the first words I heard weren't greetings or love, but sharp reminders from my family. What's the use of all your studying? You've graduated, but you can't even earn a rupee. Look at other girls your age, already settled, already bringing money into their homes. Each sentence was like a knife, and even though I tried to act strong, their words kept echoing in my mind long after they left the room. My father often shook his head in disappointment, my mother sighed as if I was some heavy burden, and even my younger siblings sometimes mocked me, repeating the same things they heard from our parents. They never realized how hard I was trying, how much I wanted to prove myself. What they didn't see was that I wasn't just sitting idle. I was still studying, struggling to complete my M.Phil degree. It wasn't just about getting another certificate, it was about building a future for myself, about finally having a chance to stand tall and independent. But the reality was cruel. The fees, the books, the endless expenses, they were too heavy for me to manage. Many nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I would arrange the money for the next semester. I hated the feeling of begging my parents again and again, when I knew they were already tired of me. There were moments when I thought about giving up. What if I just left my studies, found some ordinary job, and settled into a routine life? But deep inside, I couldn't kill that little spark of ambition. I wanted to be someone, to make my own name, not just be known as the daughter who never earned enough. My dreams of research, of writing, of building a career, kept me moving forward even when my heart felt like sinking. Loneliness became my closest companion. At family dinners, when everyone laughed and chatted, I sat quietly, pretending to listen but drowning in my own thoughts. I wanted to scream sometimes, to tell them how much their words hurt me, how much I longed for even a little encouragement. But I swallowed everything, burying my pain beneath a fake smile. On weekends, when my friends posted pictures of trips, parties, or dinners, I scrolled through my phone silently. Most of them were working already, earning, buying their own things, while I still depended on pocket money. I didn't even remember the last time I bought something new for myself without guilt. Every penny I had went into my studies. Sometimes I skipped meals just to save a little, lying to my mother that I wasn't hungry. She never questioned much, perhaps she was too used to my quietness. There were days when I tried to find part-time jobs, tutoring kids, writing assignments for others, even considering data entry work, but nothing lasted. The money was too little, the hours too exhausting, and none of it solved the bigger problem. Each rejection letter from proper jobs felt like another nail in my coffin. Employers wanted experience, skills, confidence. And here I was, with trembling hands, soft voice, and eyes filled with desperation. Despite all this, there was a small flame of hope inside me. I would sit at my study table late into the night, surrounded by books and papers, reminding myself why I started. Education was my ticket out of this cage, I told myself. If I just held on a little longer, if I just worked harder, maybe one day my family would look at me differently. Maybe one day they would be proud instead of disappointed. But for now, I was suffocating. My room often felt like both my sanctuary and my prison. I would cry into my pillow silently, wiping my tears quickly in case someone walked in. I didn't want to give them another reason to call me weak. And yet, I was weak. I was tired of pretending. The thought of finding a proper job haunted me every day. I knew it was the only way out, both for my survival and for my self-respect. But the fear of failure, of facing the world outside, always held me back. I wasn't ready, I kept telling myself. But then, one evening, after another round of bitter taunts from my father, I realized I had no choice left. If I wanted to breathe, I had to step out. If I wanted to protect my dream of completing my M.Phil, I had to earn money myself. That night, I made a silent promise. No matter how hard it was, no matter what I had to face, I would find a job. Not just to silence my family, but to prove to myself that I was capable of more than just tears and silence. I didn't know then what kind of world awaited me outside, or how deeply it would test me. But all I knew was, I couldn't stay in that cage any longer. I had to escape. The very next morning after my silent promise, I woke up with a strange determination in my chest. My eyes were still swollen from crying, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't going to let myself stay in bed. I put on my simplest dress, tied my hair neatly, and walked out of the house as if I had somewhere important to be. In truth, I had no fixed destination. I only knew I couldn't return without at least trying. Days turned into weeks of searching, sending out resumes, walking into offices, waiting in lobbies, and sometimes facing blunt rejections right at the reception desk. Every "we'll call you" felt like a dismissal, every polite smile from HR felt like a door shutting in my face. But I kept going. And then, one morning, I received a call that changed everything. A soft female voice on the other side asked me to come in for an interview at a mid-sized company in the city. My heart raced. I wasn't even sure which one it was because I had applied everywhere I could. Still, I wrote down the address and promised to be there. That day, I dressed more carefully than usual, wearing the only crisp white shirt I owned and a plain black skirt. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I whispered, "This has to work. Please, just this one." When I entered the building, I felt my nervousness melt just a little. The office was modest but clean, filled with the gentle hum of computers and the rustle of paperwork. I sat in the waiting area, clutching my file so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Finally, I was called into a cabin. And that was the first time I saw her, my female boss. She looked to be around 35, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that made her appear both elegant and intimidating. Her hair was tied in a sleek bun, her glasses perched neatly on her nose, and her eyes sharp yet strangely warm when they met mine. "Please have a seat," she said, her voice low and steady. I sat down, my heart pounding. She glanced through my resume and looked at me thoughtfully. "You're still studying?" she asked. "Yes, I replied softly. "I'm doing my M.Phil. But I want to work as well. I really need this job." My voice cracked slightly at the end, betraying my desperation. To my surprise, her lips curved into a small smile. "Honest answer," she said, putting my resume aside. "We value honesty here more than fancy words." The interview didn't last long. She asked me a few questions about my skills, my goals, and even about my family. I answered as best as I could, fumbling sometimes, but always sincere. At the end, she said, "I'll give you a chance. You can start from Monday." I could barely believe my ears. "Thank you," I whispered, almost choking on my words. As I stepped out of her office, the weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter for the first time in years. That night, I cried again, but not out of despair. It was relief. It was the sweet taste of finally belonging somewhere. When I received my first paycheck after a month, it wasn't a huge amount, but to me, it was priceless. I held the envelope in my hands as if it were treasure. I used part of it to pay a portion of my M.Phil fees, and though it wasn't enough to cover everything, it still made me feel independent. For the first time, I wasn't asking my parents for money. I had earned it. With the rest, I bought a small gift for my mother, a simple scarf she once admired in the market. She was surprised when I handed it to her. For a brief moment, her eyes softened, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she saw me differently. The office soon became my second home. I wasn't the most confident employee, but I worked hard, stayed late when needed, and tried to learn quickly. Every small appreciation from my colleagues felt like a medal, every smile a reassurance that I was doing something right. As for my boss, she remained professional. She was strict but fair, and her sharp eyes noticed everything. She demanded discipline, but also appreciated effort. Sometimes, she would pause by my desk, glance at my notes, and say, "Good work." Those 2 words were enough to brighten my entire day. There were also little moments that gave me hope. One afternoon, I walked out of the office carrying a folder of reports. The sun was setting, and for the first time in months, I caught myself smiling. Not because life had suddenly become perfect, but because I felt I had finally taken control of my destiny. Each paycheck was like a small victory. I was still struggling, rent, fees, daily expenses, everything piled up, but now I wasn't drowning completely. I was learning to swim, even if the waves were strong. At home, my father still complained, saying my job wasn't big enough, or that my salary was too little. But I ignored him. My mother still sighed, though less often. And my siblings still mocked me sometimes. But it didn't hurt the same way anymore. I had something they didn't, I had a purpose. I remember one evening, while sitting at my desk, I thought about the girl I was just a few months ago, the one crying quietly into her pillow, afraid of the world. And I realized I wasn't her anymore. I wasn't complete, I wasn't confident, and I certainly wasn't free of struggles, but I was changing. Slowly, carefully, I was becoming stronger. Of course, I had no idea that my newfound hope would soon be tested in ways I couldn't imagine. At that time, all I saw was light at the end of a tunnel. I didn't yet know that the same light would blind me, leading me into darker corners of life. But for now, in those first months of my job, I let myself breathe. I let myself believe that everything was finally going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep not with tears, but with a quiet smile on my face, whispering to myself, "You did it. You finally did it." At first, my boss remained exactly what I admired her for, strict, professional, and inspiring. But as the weeks turned into months, I started noticing little things, small shifts in the way she treated me compared to the others. She began stopping by my desk more often. At first, it was just to check my work, to correct me or appreciate me. But then her tone grew softer, more personal. "You're improving so quickly," she said one day, her eyes lingering on mine longer than necessary. "I like people who put their heart into things." Her words warmed me. I was starving for validation, and hearing it from her filled me with a strange mix of pride and comfort. Unlike at home, where every step I took was criticized, here was someone who noticed my effort, who acknowledged my worth. Soon, her compliments became frequent. She praised my handwriting, the way I dressed, even the way I smiled when I was nervous. "You should smile more," she whispered once, almost too softly for anyone else to hear. I laughed awkwardly, brushing it off, but inside I felt a flutter I couldn't explain. There were small gestures too. If I was late, she never scolded me harshly, just asked if I was okay. If I looked tired, she would tell me to take a break. Once, when I caught a cold, she personally sent tea to my desk, saying, "You need to take care of yourself." It was such a simple thing, yet no one had shown me that kind of care in a long time. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just kindness. But then came the late-night calls. The first time, my phone buzzed at 11:30 p.m. I froze when I saw her name flashing on the screen. With trembling hands, I picked it up. "Hello. Were you sleeping?" she asked, her voice unusually soft. "No, not yet," I lied, though I had been half asleep. "I just wanted to check on you," she said. "You seemed quiet today in the office. Is something wrong?" Her concern touched me, but it also unsettled me. Why would my boss call me so late, just to ask about my mood? I mumbled something about being tired, and she chuckled. All right then. Sleep well. Good night. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, confused. No one had ever cared enough to ask how I was feeling, not my family, not even my so-called friends. And here was my boss, reaching into the silence of my nights just to check on me. The calls didn't stop. They became more frequent, sometimes just a few minutes, sometimes stretching into long conversations. She told me about her own struggles, her loneliness, her disappointments with people. I found myself opening up too, sharing things I had never said out loud before. And yet, there was something else in her tone, something deeper. The way she said my name, the way she laughed at things that weren't even funny, the way she sighed and whispered, "You know, you're different from the others. Special." Then came the comments. Subtle, suggestive, lingering in the air. "You looked beautiful today. I like that color on you. Sometimes I feel you're the only one who understands me." I told myself she was just being nice. But part of me knew better. One evening, after a long day, she called me into her cabin. Everyone else had left, and the office was wrapped in silence. She was sitting on the edge of her desk, her jacket off, her hair slightly loose. She looked different, softer, almost vulnerable. "Sit," she said, pointing to the chair near her. I obeyed, trying to calm my racing heart. She looked at me for a long time, her eyes searching mine. "Do you know how rare it is to find someone like you?" she asked quietly. I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry. "You're hardworking, innocent, sincere. You remind me of the person I used to be before this world hardened me." She smiled faintly. "You make me feel alive again." Her words sank into me, leaving me trembling. I lowered my gaze, but she leaned closer, her hand brushing lightly against mine. The touch sent a shiver through my entire body. I looked up, startled, and our faces were suddenly too close. I could feel her breath on my skin, smell the faint trace of her perfume. My heart pounded in my chest as her eyes softened. Slowly, hesitantly, she leaned in and pressed her lips gently against mine. It was not forceful, not aggressive, just a soft, lingering kiss. My eyes widened, my hands froze, my mind screamed that this was wrong. And yet, there was warmth in it, a tenderness I hadn't known before. It was as if someone was telling me, without words, that I mattered, that I was wanted. When she pulled back, her face was still close to mine. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though her eyes said something else entirely. I couldn't stop myself. I sat there frozen, my thoughts a storm. A part of me wanted to run out of the room, to erase the moment. But another part, small, hidden, was aching for that softness, that care. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept touching my lips, remembering the gentle pressure of hers. Was it wrong that I didn't hate it? Was it wrong that I felt something stir inside me, something I couldn't name? I was conflicted. She was my boss. She was taking advantage of my silence, my need. And yet, in her touch, in her words, there was no cruelty. There was care. There was desire. There was something that made me feel less invisible. The days that followed only deepened my confusion. She became bolder, standing too close, letting her hand rest on my shoulder longer than necessary, whispering things only I could hear. At work, I tried to stay professional, but my body betrayed me. Every glance, every brush of her fingers, left me shaken. I knew I was walking a dangerous line. But how could I push away the only person who made me feel seen? The days after that first kiss felt like walking on a tightrope. Every morning as I dressed for work, I stared at my reflection in the mirror and asked myself the same question: what am I doing? Yet, no matter how confused or guilty I felt, quitting never seemed like an option. I needed that job. The small salary I earned was the only reason I could still afford my M.Phil fees, the only reason I could look my family in the eye without begging. If I left, everything would collapse, my studies, my dignity, my fragile independence. So, I swallowed my doubts and forced myself to go on, pretending nothing had changed, even though everything had. But my boss knew. She could sense my silence, my hesitations. And she used them. At first, she wrapped her demands in care. "You look stressed," she would murmur, her hand brushing mine. "Don't overwork yourself. You know I'll take care of you." Other times, she slipped hints into her late-night calls. "You don't have to worry about money. I can help with your fees, if you just let me be closer to you." Her words were both a temptation and a threat. I needed that help desperately, but I hated myself for even considering it. I wanted to earn on my own, not trade my dignity for survival. Yet, the way she said it, soft, persuasive, made it harder to resist. One evening, after a particularly long day, she called me into her cabin again. The office was nearly empty, the sun sinking low beyond the windows. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, half affection, half authority. "You know I like you, don't you?" she asked, her voice calm, almost too calm. I swallowed hard. I respect you, but this isn't right." Her smile faded into something sharper. "Right? Wrong? Do you think the world cares about those words?" She leaned closer, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You need this job, don't you? You need the money. The fees for your M.Phil. Your family's expectations. I know everything, my dear. And I'm the one who can make your life easier." I felt my chest tighten. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't threatening outright, but her words wrapped around me like chains. She was reminding me of my helplessness, of how fragile my entire world was. That night, when I got home, I locked myself in my room and let the tears flow. I pressed my face into my pillow, muffling the sobs so no one would hear. I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who once dreamed of success through hard work and honesty. I cried for the unfairness of it all, that the very people who were supposed to guide me were the ones breaking me. I wanted to quit. God knows I wanted to. But then I thought of the fees due next week, of my mother's sighs when I asked for money, of my father's cold stare. Without this job, I was nothing. And so I wiped my tears, telling myself I had no choice. The next morning, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I smiled politely, did my tasks, and avoided her eyes as much as I could. But avoidance only made her more persistent. She started calling me into her cabin for small reasons, checking files that didn't need checking, asking questions she already knew the answers to. Each time, she would inch closer, her words dripping with affection, but edged with control. "You don't have to be afraid of me," she whispered once, her fingers brushing against my cheek. "I'm not your enemy. I want to take care of you. Don't fight me." Her touch burned. Not because it was rough, but because it was gentle, gentle in a way that confused me, trapped me. If she had been cruel, it would have been easier to resist. But she offered care where the world had only given me pain. And that made it harder. The weight of it all began to crush me. At home, my family still taunted me, unaware of the storm I was enduring at work. They thought I was finally becoming responsible, finally earning, finally proving myself. They didn't know the price I was paying for it. One night, I broke completely. After another suffocating day, I sat on the floor of my room, hugging my knees, tears streaming endlessly down my face. I whispered to myself over and over, "Why me? Why always me?" My chest ached with every sob, my body shaking from the pressure I could no longer contain. I thought of running away, of leaving everything behind. But where would I go? What would I do? I had no one to turn to, no safe place to rest. In that moment, I realized how truly alone I was. Surrounded by people, yet unseen. Working so hard, yet controlled. Dreaming so big, yet suffocating under the weight of survival. And still, the next morning, I rose again, dressed for work, and forced a smile onto my face. Because what else could I do? I don't know how long I could have carried that weight alone. Every day with her felt like walking through a maze with no way out, and the walls were closing in tighter and tighter. My heart ached constantly, my mind was exhausted, and I began to dread going to work even though I desperately needed it. And then one afternoon, after another suffocating meeting with her, I broke. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to do something I had been avoiding for weeks. Go to someone higher, someone who might understand, someone who could help. That someone was my male boss. He wasn't as visible in the office as she was, but he was above her in the hierarchy. He was in his early 40s, tall, with a voice that carried authority. From a distance, he always seemed professional, respectable, the kind of man who took things seriously. I told myself that if anyone could stop what was happening, it would be him. I waited until the office was quieter and knocked on his door. "Come in," he said without looking up from his laptop. I stepped inside, nerves trembling inside me. "Sir, do you have a moment? I need to talk to you about something important." He glanced up, his brows slightly furrowed. "Of course. Sit down." I sat on the chair across from his desk, my palms damp with sweat. My voice wavered as I began. "Sir, I don't know how to say this, but I've been having a really hard time here. My boss," I swallowed, trying to find the right words. "She's been asking things from me that I'm not comfortable with. She pressures me, uses my situation, and I don't know what to do anymore." For a long moment, he just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair, sighing softly. "I see," he said. "I had a feeling she might be crossing lines. You're not the first one she's gotten too close to." His words startled me. "Then, you know." He nodded slowly. "I've heard things, yes. But it's difficult to interfere without proof. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of relief. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, someone believed me. "Please, sir," I whispered, my voice breaking, "I just want to work. I don't want to be involved in anything else. Can you help me?" He leaned forward, his eyes softening. "Of course I can," he said gently. "You don't deserve to go through this. I'll make sure she leaves you alone." The kindness in his voice made my chest tighten. Tears stung my eyes as I whispered, "Thank you." I didn't know who else to turn to. "Sure," he said, almost soothingly. "You did the right thing coming to me." For the next few days, I noticed that my female boss kept a little more distance. She didn't call me as often, didn't linger at my desk the way she used to. I thought maybe he had spoken to her privately, maybe things were finally going to get better. But soon, his behavior began to shift. Subtly, at first he started calling me into his office more often, usually under the excuse of discussing reports or projects. At first, it felt normal, after all, he was the senior boss. But then his tone grew softer, his eyes lingered longer than necessary. "You're a brave girl," he told me one afternoon, his voice low. "It takes courage to come forward like you did." I smiled weakly, murmuring, I just didn't know what else to do. He leaned back, studying me. "You know," he said slowly, "I value honesty and loyalty more than anything. And I see those qualities in you. You remind me of someone who cared about me deeply." I froze, unsure of how to respond. His words sounded almost like admiration, but there was something else behind them. Over the next week, his compliments became more personal. You're smarter than most of the people here. You have such expressive eyes. You don't even know how beautiful you are, do you? I laughed nervously, brushing it off, but inside my stomach knotted with dread. I recognized the pattern, it was too familiar. And then, one evening, he asked me to stay back after everyone had left. My heart pounded as I stepped into his office, the air heavy with silence. He closed the door behind me and gestured for me to sit. You know, he began, his voice smooth, I've done a lot to keep you safe here. She doesn't trouble you much anymore, does she? I swallowed hard. No, she's keeping some distance now. He nodded, leaning closer across the desk. That's because I spoke to her. I told her to leave you alone. But, his eyes flickered with something that made my skin crawl. I've been thinking. Who's going to take care of you now? You still need guidance. You still need protection. My blood ran cold. Sir, I just want to do my job, I whispered. He smiled faintly. Of course. But we are both adults here. You know how the world works. Nothing comes free. His words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I just sat there, numb, unable to believe what I was hearing. You mean, my voice shook. You're asking me the same thing she did. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached out, his hand brushing against mine on the desk. Don't look so scared. I'm not asking for much. Just closeness. A relationship that benefits us both. I pulled my hand back, my heart hammering. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in, the same way they had in her cabin. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen. I trusted you, I whispered, my voice breaking. I thought you would help me. And I am helping you, he said calmly. Think about it. With me on your side, your position here is secure. You'll never have to worry about your fees, your salary, your future. All I ask is, don't make me feel like a fool for caring about you. The betrayal burned deeper than anything I had ever felt. First her, now him. Two people in power, two people I had looked up to, and both saw me not as a human being, not as a struggling girl just trying to survive, but as someone to exploit. That night, I walked home in a daze, the city lights blurring through my tears. My legs felt heavy, my chest hollow. I had gone searching for help, for safety, for protection. Instead, I had found another trap. And for the first time in my life, I realized just how alone I truly was. After what happened with both of my bosses, I felt like my whole world had collapsed. At home, there was still the same taunts and endless pressure. At work, I no longer felt safe with either of them. Every smile, every word, every offer of help now felt like a hidden trap. I stopped staying late at the office. I avoided unnecessary conversations. I kept my head down, focusing only on my work. The truth was, I was tired, tired of being used, tired of feeling helpless. The only thing I still had faith in was my M.Phil. If nothing else, I told myself, I would complete it. That degree was the only way out of this cage. But hiding pain isn't easy. Sometimes, in the middle of the office, I would just zone out, staring at my screen without really seeing anything. My chest always felt heavy, like I was carrying a secret that no one could understand. It was during one of those moments that she noticed me, Aisha, my co-worker. She was my age, 25, and had joined the company just a few months after me. We were never more than polite colleagues. She sat a few desks away, working quietly on her projects. But that day, when she caught me sitting still with tears quietly brimming in my eyes, something changed. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. I quickly wiped my eyes and forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. Just tired." She tilted her head, studying me for a moment. "Tired, or hurting?" Her words hit me. For the first time in so long, someone wasn't accusing me, pressuring me, or demanding something. She was simply asking. Genuinely. That evening, as everyone packed up to leave, she walked beside me. "You don't have to tell me," she said gently, "but if you ever need someone to listen, I'm here." Something about her tone felt safe, almost healing. I didn't open up that day, but her kindness stayed in my heart. Over the next week, she began sitting with me during lunch breaks. She would crack small jokes, trying to lighten my mood. Sometimes she would bring an extra snack, sliding it toward me with a smile. "You look like you need this more than me." And slowly, the wall I had built around myself began to crack. One evening, after most of the staff had gone home, I found myself staying behind to finish some reports. Aisha stayed too, working quietly at her desk. The office felt strangely calm, just the sound of our keyboards clicking, the occasional shuffle of papers. At some point, I sighed deeply without realizing it. She looked up, "That heavy, huh?" she said. I smiled weakly. "You have no idea." She stood, walked over, and leaned against my desk. "Then maybe, tell me." Not as a co-worker, but as a friend. Something inside me broke open. Words I had been holding back for months came spilling out. I told her about my family's constant taunts, about my desperate need to pay my fees, about how my female boss had taken advantage of that, and how even my male boss betrayed my trust. My voice cracked as I spoke, tears running down my cheeks. Through it all, Aisha didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just listened, truly listened. When I finally finished, I was trembling, ashamed of my own weakness. But she reached out and gently took my hand. "You're not weak," she whispered. "You've been carrying so much on your own, anyone would break under that." Her touch was warm, steady, unlike the forceful grips I had experienced before. My heart raced, not with fear this time, but with something else, something softer. We sat like that for a while, her hand wrapped around mine, until she finally said, "You deserve care, not control. Love, not pressure." Her words made me cry again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release. I don't know what came over me, but when she leaned closer, I didn't pull away. Our eyes met, hers full of compassion, mine filled with longing for something real. She brushed a strand of hair from my face, her fingers lingering for just a second. My breath caught in my throat. And then, gently, she pressed her lips to mine. It wasn't like the unwanted advances I had endured. There was no demand, no pressure, no power games. Just a soft, tender kiss, so full of comfort, respect, and genuine affection that I felt my whole body melt. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel trapped. I felt free that night. As I walked home, my lips still tingled with the memory of her kiss. And my heart, once so heavy, carried a new kind of hope, one born not from desperation, but from something far more beautiful, love and care. After that first kiss, something gentle yet powerful began to grow between Aisha and me. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't demanding, it was patient. Almost like she understood I had been wounded too many times to trust easily, and she was willing to wait for me to heal. We started spending more time together, not just at the office but outside too. Sometimes it was simple, a cup of tea at a roadside stall, or walking through the park after work. Other times, it was long conversations over the phone, where we would talk until late at night. For the first time in so long, my evenings were not filled with fear of late-night calls from my boss, but with laughter and warmth shared with someone who truly cared. With Aisha, I could be myself. I told her things I never told anyone, how I often felt like an outsider in my own family, how I dreamed of one day becoming a professor and inspiring students the way my own teachers had inspired me, how I sometimes feared I wasn't strong enough to survive everything life kept throwing at me. And in return, she shared her dreams too. She wanted to travel the world, to write a book one day, to build a life where love wasn't something to hide, but something to celebrate. Listening to her, I realized that love wasn't meant to feel like chains, it was supposed to feel like wings. Every moment with her reminded me of the difference between what I had suffered and what I had now. My bosses had wrapped their attention in control. Their care was really possession, their affection was really pressure. With them, I always felt smaller, like my choices didn't matter. But with Aisha, it was the opposite. She never made demands. If I pulled away, she respected it. If I cried, she let me. If I laughed, she joined in. Her love didn't suffocate me, it gave me space to breathe. One evening, after a long day, I sat on the office rooftop with her, the city lights glowing below us. The cool breeze brushed against my skin as I leaned against her shoulder. For a moment, the world felt quiet. You know, I whispered, for so long I thought love was just pain. That maybe I didn't deserve anything good. She turned to me, her eyes soft and steady. You deserve more than good. You deserve peace, respect, joy. And I want to give you all of that, not because I expect anything back, but because you're worth it. Her words touched something deep inside me. A part of me that had been broken finally began to heal. That night, we kissed again, under the starlit sky. It wasn't a kiss of desperation, it was a kiss of promise. A promise that I was not alone anymore, that someone would walk beside me without trying to control where I stepped. In Aisha's love, I found the strength I had lost. My studies felt lighter, my days brighter. Even my family's taunts didn't cut as deep, because now I had someone who reminded me daily that I was not defined by others' cruelty, but by my own resilience and worth. Love, I realized, was not about power or fear. Love was about healing. And with Aisha, I had finally found it. The change in me didn't go unnoticed. For weeks I had been walking into the office with lighter steps, my smile no longer weighed down with shadows. Aisha's presence in my life had transformed me, and though we kept our relationship quiet, love has a way of shining through even the smallest moments. A passing glance, a subtle touch, a spark of laughter, it was enough for people to sense something different. And eventually, it was enough for my bosses to notice. It happened on a Friday evening. I was leaving the office with Aisha when my female boss, Ms. Nadia, called my name sharply from her cabin. Julia, step inside. Her tone was cold, unfamiliar, but her eyes burned with a fury I had never seen before. Aisha gave me a reassuring squeeze on the hand before I stepped inside alone. The moment the door shut, Nadia leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, lips pressed tightly together. So this is why you've been ignoring me, she asked, her voice trembling with anger. You think I don't see? You think I'm blind? I froze. My heart pounded, but I managed to whisper, see what? Her laughter was bitter. You and Aisha. Don't play innocent. I gave you everything, attention, care, opportunities, and this is how you repay me. By choosing her over me. Her words cut deep, but not in the way they used to. For the first time, I saw clearly, it had never been about love for her. It had always been about possession. Before I could answer, the door swung open and my male boss, Mr. Cameron, strode in. He looked equally furious. So it's true, he said, glaring at me. I thought maybe you were confused, maybe you needed guidance, but no, you're just making a fool of us. Both of us. Nadia's head snapped toward him. Both? Don't tell me you. Cameron smirked. Oh, she came to me for help. Poor, helpless Julia. And I would have helped her, if she hadn't gone running into your little co-worker's arms. Subtle touch. A spark of laughter. It was enough for people to sense something different. The air grew heavy. Their anger filled the room like smoke, suffocating, poisonous. For a moment, the old me wanted to shrink, to apologize, to beg them not to take away the one thing I had, my job. But then I remembered Aisha's words, her belief in me, her promise that I deserved better. And for the first time in my life, I didn't stay silent. I stood tall and looked at both of them. My voice shook at first, but grew steadier with every word. You didn't give me love. You gave me fear. You didn't give me care. You gave me chains. And now you're angry because I broke them. Nadia's face went pale, her anger flickering into shock. Cameron narrowed his eyes, as though he couldn't believe I was daring to talk back. You used my helplessness, I continued, tears stinging my eyes, but refusing to fall. Both of you. You saw a girl struggling to survive, desperate to keep her job, and you tried to make her pay with her dignity. But I won't. Not anymore. For a long, heavy silence, no one spoke. Then Cameron slammed his hand against the desk. Do you realize what you're doing? You'll ruin your career. No one will hire you if we speak against you. I swallowed hard but met his gaze. Then I'll build something of my own. I'd rather fail with dignity than succeed by surrendering to people like you. And with that, I walked out of the cabin. My legs trembled, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Aisha was waiting outside, her eyes wide, her hands ready to catch me if I fell. Instead, I took her hand and held it firmly. We are done here, I whispered. The next week, we both resigned. It was terrifying, like jumping off a cliff without knowing if the ground below would catch us. But for the first time, I felt free. Together, we started small, freelance projects, tutoring sessions, even helping students with research work. Slowly, our little venture grew. It wasn't much at first, but it was ours. No bosses hovering over us, no pressure, no chains. Just us, building something from the ground up. Meanwhile, my M.Phil studies became my anchor. Aisha was my biggest supporter, quizzing me before exams, making coffee during my late-night study sessions, reminding me of my worth every time I doubted myself. And step by step, I got closer to my dream. The day I finally held my M.Phil degree in my hands, my family was there. The same family that once taunted me for being jobless, for being a burden, now stood with pride in their eyes. My father shook my hand. My mother hugged me tightly. My siblings whispered, "We are proud of you." It wasn't easy to forgive their harsh words, but in that moment, I realized something. They hadn't seen my strength before, but now they did. Later that evening, standing on the rooftop with Aisha, I looked at the horizon and smiled. Do you ever think about how it all began? How broken I was when you first found me? She brushed a strand of hair from my face. And look at you now. Stronger than ever. You saved yourself, Julia. I just walked beside you. I rested my head on her shoulder, watching the colors of the sunset. My journey had been painful, full of betrayal and fear, but it had led me here, to love, freedom, and self-respect. For so long, I thought love would destroy me. But in the end, it was love that saved me.